Hello. Today's demonstration will show you how to use the CBO, Vaccine Invoice, and Expense Report package for advanced payments. Please keep in mind this video only applies to vaccine-related expenditures. This package is used to request the initial advancement of up to $150,000 and to submit documentation once your organization has started spending money on vaccine events. First, we'll begin by discussing the advance payment funding option. To complete a request for advance payment, start by filling out tab 1, the funding request form, which is the current tab we are on. We will provide instructions to help guide you while filling out this tab, which you can find by scrolling to the right where it says Instructions for Completing Funding Request Form. Scroll back over. The first step on this tab is to complete all the blue cells. Please enter your organization's name, contract number, and the period start date, which is a drop-down menu. And please use these menus. And the period end date, which also is a drop-down menu. The period start and end dates must be in the future when requesting an advanced payment. If you need help finding your contract number, you can find it in your signed OHA vote vaccine contract. Where the form asks, what would you like to do? You will select Request Money Before My Vaccine Event, Advanced Payment. You'll find a list of allowable expense types. For example, if your organization estimates and budgets $18,000 towards staff time for the management, coordination, and planning of vaccine-related events, you would enter $18,000. So here is staff time. We're going to enter $18,000. If you are planning on doing outreach and engagement and you budget for $10,000, you would find outreach materials and enter $10,000. You would repeat this process until all the blue cells are filled with the allowable expenses next to it. If you need additional help, or if something is not listed, you can use the other description cell in row 35, which is right here. Other description, and you would enter the amount here. To determine if expenses are allowable, please see the list of non-reimbursable expenses on page 2 of the instructions document on the website, or feel free to reach out to your vaccine engagement coordinator. Before submitting this form, be sure that the total at the bottom of the spreadsheet matches the total your organization would like to request. After completing this step, save the spreadsheet and send the entire file to the vote team by emailing it to ohkovid.fema@dhsoha.state.oregon, that's OREGON.US, and your vaccine engagement coordinator. This email address is also located on page 1 of the instructions document, which you can find Advance payment spend down walkthrough. To request advance payment, only tab 1 of the spreadsheet is needed. However, when submitting your advanced payment documentation, all tabs need to be filled out. Where the form asks, "What would you like to do?" select Submit Documentation for my vaccine event, Advance Payment Spend Down, which is right here. Next, please fill in the blue cells in the Breakdown of Vaccine Expenditures section and tell us how you spent your advanced payment. This process will be similar to how you initially filled out your request for advance payment. However, instead of entering estimated amounts, please enter the actual amount listed on the receipt and invoices that your organization spent during the specified time period that you will be submitting. This documentation is required by vote and is due within 15 days after the reporting period ends. For example, if the period end date is 12/31/2021, so December 31st, 2021, the due date is going to be 1/15/2022, or January 15th of 2022. We like to share this information up front to encourage our partners to keep detailed notes and receipts to make the process easier in the future. We're going to move on to tab 2, the invoice summary. To complete tab 2, start by filling in the blue cells. You'll enter your invoice number. This should be a unique number that separates different invoices from your organization. You'll then add your OHA vote agreement number, the date you are submitting the request, your organization name, address, the name of the primary contact, their phone number and email address, and your organization's tax ID and EIN number. So we'll enter So here I've added an example of where you would enter the organization name, the address, the city, the state, and the zip code, a telephone number. There's an additional spot to add a separate number and an email address. Because this is an example, I do not have a tax ID or an EIN number. You should then enter the detailed description of the event or events that your organization held in the description cell. For example, community vaccine event in April and May of 2022. So right here, we are going to enter community vaccine event, April and May 2022. we are going to move on to tab 3A. To complete tab 3A, labor documentation, we provided instructions to help guide you through the process of completing this tab, which you can find by scrolling to the right and see where it says instructions for completing labor documentation. And as we can see, they're right here on the screen. Start with step 1 by answering the question, do you have a payroll timekeeping system? There is a drop-down menu where you should select yes or no. So here is the question, and we will select yes or no. If you select yes in step 1, move on to step 2. If you select no, move on to tab 3B. So for this, we are going to select no. So we will move on to tab 3B. For step 2, if you answer yes, and you move on to step 2, if you have a timekeeping system, enter the name of the payroll output file you are attaching as documentation. If you do not have a timekeeping system, we have created tab 3B for you to report the staff time. So again, we are going to select no for this demonstration and go to tab 3B. At the top of this tab, we've included a few examples, and if you scroll down, you will see we've provided instructions for completing expense documentation. So here are a few of our examples, and if we scroll down farther, we will find the instructions, and we can move this box as needed. Let's scroll back up to the top. To help guide you while completing this form, please note this tab is only for employee hours, not volunteer hours. Start by entering the name, title, and employee status for each employee. Employee status means whether each employee is full-time, part-time, or a temporary employee. For our demonstration today, Amelie will be working part-time outreach education coordinator. So we will enter that here. Amelie, she does outreach and Nico also works at this organization, and he is a full-time, Amelie was part-time, and Nico is full-time, and he is the executive director. There is a cell for each new date from the contract start date of 12/1/2020 up until the new contract ends of 12/31/2022. For this demonstration today, we are going to enter information for the May and April vaccine events, which are on our screen currently. So as a part-time employee, Amelie has worked in regular, so REG. We'll say she worked 8 hours on the 20th, She worked 6 hours on the 23rd of April and 4 hours on the 28th. Nico, in the regular time, for full time, worked 8 hours every day. From the 20th to the 24th in April. Then in May, we will say that Amelie has worked on the 3rd for 6 hours, the 9th for 4 hours, and on the 11th for 2 hours. And Nico has worked 8 hours for these 5 days from the 2nd, or excuse me, the 3rd of May to the 7th of May. And then we will scroll over past June to this section here. After entering each employee's time, scroll all the way to the right as we did and enter the hourly rate for each employee. For our demonstration purposes, we are going to say that Amelie makes $30 an hour and Nico makes $45 an hour. And as you can see, when I entered in their rates, the math, a formula has been calculated and has done the math for us to make it as simple as possible. If you need additional help with this section, please know our team is always available and happy to assist you if you would like some help with this. We are going to move to tab 4, expense documentation. Please use the information directly from receipts and invoices as you enter your documentation in the package. We've included a few examples at the top of this tab, and if you scroll to the right, you will see the provided instructions for completing expense documentation, which you can kind of see right here. So let's scroll to the right. Here they are. Okay. To start, use the drop-down menu under reimbursable expenses. To select the allowable expense category your expense is most closely associated with. So, as you can see, here are some examples, and here is the drop-down menu. These correlate with the very first tab we filled out in the funding expense report. So we have outreach materials, there's and different things related to that. So next you will need to enter the invoice date, store or company name, so invoice date, store company name, if applicable, the invoice number, and a detailed reason that you made this purchase, along with the exact amount from the invoice or receipt. For our demonstration today, we will use examples from made-up receipts and invoices. So let's say our events as invoices for a mariachi band, a taco truck, gift cards for volunteers, an Amazon receipt for walkie-talkie radios, 2 different receipts for outreach materials, and some supplies for the event to help entertain kids after they get their booster. You will need to complete all these fields for each of your vaccine-related expenditures. So we have outreach materials, and we will say that we purchased from our receipt on 4/23. We went to FedEx. There is no invoice number, and we printed flyers to hang around. And this was $475.36. Then we had 2 outreach materials, so we'll categorize these together. And for this outreach material, we picked these up and did this errand on the 1st of May. Here, we bought something from some photos from Shutterfly. The invoice number was KJ103, and printed photos for an event, and we will say this was $36.22. Now we have gift cards. So there isn't a category here. So we will scroll down to find other. And we bought these gift cards for volunteer appreciation on May 12th, 2022. We got them from Safeway. There was no invoice, it was just a receipt. And they were for gift cards. And we gave them $50 each. And there were 6 volunteers, so that's $300. Next, we have a Mariachi Band. So we go back to our drop-down menu. We scroll down to and they are called M Band. Their invoice number was 555-1212 MB. And they were entertainment during the event. And they were $275. Lastly, we had a taco truck, and there on the 12th of May again. Their name was Taco Truck. Their invoice number was and our details were a taco truck during the event to provide hot food for participants. And it was $600 for them to be there for the day. To help speed up the review process and ultimately decrease your wait time for payment processing, we ask that you organize your expenses and reimbursement expenses column by the expense category. So just like how we did right here, our outreach materials are together and our supplies and equipment are together. When submitting documentation, please attach PDF copies or pictures of all receipts. Please organize your receipts by allowable expense category and submit one PDF for each separate allowable activity. So for outreach materials, make sure all are included in the same PDF file, with each receipt or invoice as a separate page within the file. We are now going to move on to tab 4.5, the mileage tab. This tab was created to help calculate the reimbursable amount for mileage. If you scroll to the right, you will see we provided some instructions to help you complete this form. So they're right here. To complete this tab, please include the employee's name, date of travel, total miles traveled, mileage rate, and a description explaining what the travel was for and how it relates to the vaccine event for each line item. So, for example, Amelie and Nico, who are employees from our labor documentation, will be part of this example. So, Amelie did some traveling. Was this travel before the new insurance policy came into place? And yes, because we are doing documentation for April and May. So we go to the drop-down menu and we select prior. We enter the date for this travel. So on April 16th of 2022, Amelie traveled 16 miles. And the GSA rate is in this black box right here. So because it was in April, January to June of 2022, we would enter 0.585 here. So 0.585. And drove car to pick up outreach material. And as you can see, the formula has calculated the total right here. Let's enter another example. This time, Nico has traveled. We're going to say no, this travel, he is an employee. And for a different example, if you are documenting after the 7/1 date, so the July 1st of 2022, you would select yes, he is an employee, because your CBO insurance has an organizational insurance plan. We will document that travel was done on 7/3 of this year, that Nico traveled 45 miles, and we look over here, and from July until December, you will enter 0.625, so 0.625, and travel to from home to event site and returned. And as you can see, the calculation has done. Now, please keep in mind, this is just an example. If your invoice is only for the months of April and May, you would not enter in this travel. This is purely for an example. Lastly, we are going to move on to tab 5, the certification. To complete tab 5, you must include the date the invoice or package was completed, the name of the person who prepared this report, and a virtual signature of the authorized agent at your organization. Filling in these cells certifies the information in your package is accurate. If you have any more questions while completing this invoice and expense report package, please reach out to your vaccine engagement coordinator or email the VOTE fiscal team at ohjcovid.fema@dha.state.oregon.us. This email address, as stated earlier, is also located on page 1 of the instruction materials.